Again, good afternoon. Recording in progress. Thank you. So again, thank you all for being here. My name is Jared. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am Senior Regional Admissions Advisor at Oregon State University, but I'm based right in Seattle, Washington. So if you are from the state of Washington, I'm your admissions contact. And I'm joined today by my co-host, who I will let her introduce herself quickly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Pham. I am the Regional Admissions Counselor for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Arizona campus specifically, she, her, hers. And I handle students in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska, and I'm based out of Bremerton.
Great. So Amy and I today will be covering kind of financial aid 101, kind of how to understand this whole process, because paying for college is a really big component of actually going to college. So our agenda today will just kind of briefly define financial aid, so different forms of it and ways you can apply for it. We'll break down your offer letter, kind of help you understand what your aid offer actually means. And then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of comparing the true costs and some other tips and tricks. And then both Amy and I will briefly talk about our own institutions and then answer any questions you may have. So we will jump right into it. Again, kind of who we are. We wanted to just give a little bit more background about ourselves. Amy and I both work for different institutions, but we're part of an organization called ARROW, which stands for the Association for Regional Representatives of Oregon and Washington, which is the group that has organized this whole week. And it is made up of colleges from all over the world, actually. So lots of reps who are based here in the Northwest who are happy to answer your questions about their specific institutions. Again, just to kind of recap our agenda, first up, what is financial aid? Then we'll get into FAFSA, WASFA, and ORSA and how to apply. And then, of course, breaking down that award and comparing your costs. So to start off, defining financial aid, there's a lot that kind of falls under that financial aid umbrella. But the short answer is it's money to help you pay for college or a career, school, or industry, kind of any higher education. Financial aid can be made up of a mix of different types of aid. So there are grants, which is free money based typically off your family's financial need, and that is money that does not need to be repaid. So that is yours to keep, sort of like a scholarship. There's a program called Work Study that you may qualify for through the FAFSA as well. And that is a specific program where you actually get a part-time job either on or off campus at the school you're attending. You're paid a little bit more than the minimum wage, and that overage actually goes directly to your student account to help pay down your tuition costs. But you do also still get a paycheck that you can use for your personal expenses. Loans are really kind of the most common part of financial aid, what most students are going to see in their offer letter. That is, of course, money that does need to be repaid back at some point. There are a lot of different types of loans. Some actually start accruing interest while you're still in school. Others don't start accruing interest until after you graduate. So that's kind of part of that breaking down your offer letter and understanding it will help you understand those different types of loans and what they mean. And then, of course, financial aid also includes scholarships. So that is free money given to you, typically by the school or by some sort of community organization, maybe a local charity or a local business. But that is money given directly to you to help fund your education that does not need to be paid back as well. And then the last type of financial aid is called a tuition discount. A lot of schools may refer to a tuition discount as a scholarship, but really it just means that they're actually reducing the amount you're being charged every year. And some schools do that very, very differently. So we'll talk about that later today as well. Understanding the different types of aid applications. So the first, the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. This is what colleges really use to determine your federal aid eligibility. And this is what the huge majority of students are going to submit when they're applying for aid. A lot of students may not submit a FAFSA because they think maybe my family makes too much money, I'm not going to qualify for anything, which is understandable, but we always recommend that you submit a FAFSA no matter what, just because many colleges do still need some sort of financial need indicator for some of their scholarships and awards. Plus, you never know what you might actually qualify for. There is a lot of financial aid programming out there. You may qualify for something you didn't even think about. The other two types, the WASFA and the ORSA, those are specific aid applications for the states of Washington and Oregon. Students will submit this if they're not eligible to fill out a FAFSA for any reason. The most common reason is students who are undocumented and don't have any sort of like social security number. They're not able to apply for federal aid through the FAFSA. So this is another way for them to get some sort of grants and financial assistance to go on to college through other channels besides the federal U.S. Department of Education. Again, that only applies to schools in Washington and Oregon. So if you're filling out the WASFA, that's only going to apply to your Washington public institutions. Oregon is only going to apply to your Oregon institutions. Links for both of those are included here on this page. Applications for all of these open October 1st of your senior year, which is much, much earlier than it used to be when I was a student. So you really do have an early opportunity to start applying for that financial aid during the college application process. Some documents that you will need to apply. Of course, the first is a social security number or alien registration number, depending on if you're filling out the FAFSA or one of the state-specific aid applications. If you're filling out the FAFSA, you'll need your federal income tax returns, including your W-2s, and any record of other money that you've earned from within the last couple of years. The financial aid process is based on the prior year tax information. So for students hoping to attend college in fall 2023, they're applying in October 2022 for financial aid with their full year 2021 tax information. Hopefully that makes sense, but just make sure that you're going back a couple years on that. You also need any bank statements, records of investments, just because financial aid really does dig into all of those assets as part of the financial equation. And at this point, I will turn it over to Amy for breaking down the offer letter.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. So just like Jared was talking about, financial aid is an umbrella term. It's a mixed bag of resources that can help fund your education. So to make it easier for you to understand, one portion of financial aid is what we consider gift aid or free money. It is comprised of scholarships, tuition discounts, grants. It's money that you don't need to pay back and you are given up front. So majority of universities will offer merit scholarships is what it's called. So merit is based on your merit. So every school is a little bit different. So definitely check with the admissions counselor for that school specifically to see what they take into consideration. But things that they may consider: your GPA, of course, your class ranking if your school does it, and test scores if the university requires it. Be aware that some universities, or most universities, will have GPA requirements. So for example, maybe a 3.0 minimum GPA to maintain and renew your scholarships every year. Maintaining full-time status is a common requirement. So scholarships, merit scholarships, athletic scholarships, scholarships that are given to you based off of your extracurricular involvement. So those are the things that we consider gift aid or free money. Next slide, please. Other forms of aid include loans, which can also be federal direct loans. We'll get into what subsidized versus unsubsidized is in future slides. Parent Plus loan and private loans coming from your personal bank or any other funding institutions that you find on your own. And then just like how Jared was mentioning, work study, it's comparable to a part-time job on campus. So similar in the terms of employment, but where that money comes from is need-based, and it's based off of your FAFSA numbers. Next slide. So going down into subsidized versus unsubsidized. So this can be a lot to understand, and I highly encourage you to continue asking questions while you're in high school, once you get to university level, during that process when you're applying for colleges, because this is what will affect your future later on when you graduate from college. So subsidized is when the government will cover the interest for your loan when you pull it out. So when you get these federal loans, when you enroll into school, it's pulled the moment you start school because you need that to pay off your tuition in the beginning of the term. Subsidized is when the government covers the interest for that loan. Unsubsidized is when that interest starts accruing the moment the loan is pulled. So from the moment you start school with unsubsidized loans, the interest will start accruing from then on. And then when the grace period ends, when you graduate, any of the unsubsidized interest amount will capitalize and it will be added to your principal amount, which AKA that just means it's just going to take a little longer to pay off your student loans. You're a little bit tied longer. And then what's a grace period? So I mentioned grace period. Grace period is just the amount of time that the government gives you to just, you've graduated, you celebrate, you have that time to find a job, secure employment, secure some cash flow. So they do give you 6 months to get settled after you graduate before they start requiring you to start repaying your loans, federal loans. Next slide. And then there's something called EFC, traditionally considered EFC, which is called estimated family contribution. That is the number that schools use to determine what to award you for need-based aid. And now it has changed to SAI, Student Aid Index. I'm actually learning this recently as well as I'm doing this PowerPoint. But the EFC or SAI is now what it's referred. It's calculations made by the federal government when you submit your FAFSA, and you're responsible for paying out of pocket based on whatever number they come up with. It may not be accurate. The schools really don't have jurisdiction over that, but that is the number that we are required to work with because we are given it by the government. Next slide. So this is an example of a fictitious private university. So this is what you can expect to see when you've been accepted and you get your financial aid package in the mail. They break it down between grants and scholarships. So the free money, the gift aid that you'll get, breaking it down per term. And again, every school will do it slightly differently. So it's not always going to look like this. They'll list out your federal loans and how much you are going to be awarded for that based off of your FAFSA information. And it'll break down your estimated cost of attendance before and after your financial aid resources have been taken into account. So highly encourage you to work with your financial aid office at whatever college you're applying to, just because every school is going to look different. You want to make sure you're making sense of this before you commit to any school. Next slide.
Great, and I think this is my section again. So kind of this next section, comparing the true costs. A lot of students get very caught up in like the amounts of loans and scholarships they're giving you, but unless you actually do the math, reducing those numbers from the tuition sticker price, your true cost might be a little bit different. So we really encourage students to do the math, figure out what this is actually costing you once everything is all said and done. So a few different ways to kind of consider your cost. Public versus private institution is obviously going to impact your true cost. The biggest part of this is tuition dollars and how the college is funded. Private universities, so here in the Northwest, places like University of Portland or Gonzaga University, they have the same tuition rate whether you are an in-state student or an out-of-state student. So that sticker price is always going to be the same. Public universities like Oregon State University or Washington State University, we actually receive our funding from the state government, which they receive that from the taxpayers of that state. So that's why we have that differential in-state versus out-of-state tuition rate, which can, of course, affect your actual price. And we talk about sticker price versus actual price. It's kind of just what I was talking about. Every college has that posted tuition bill, which is some $30,000, for example, but the actual price is when all of your scholarships and your financial aid and any tuition discounts you're receiving have been applied. That's going to be your actual price, and that should be the number you're really relying more heavily on when you're making your final decision in the spring. One other kind of cost saving strategy is the WUI program, or the Western Undergraduate Exchange. For those of you who don't know, the WUI program is an agreement with the Western states you see on this map here, where a student from one of those states can attend a participating university for up to 150% of in-state tuition. So for example, if at Oregon State, our in-state tuition is $10,000, a Washington resident could attend under the WUI program for $15,000. The fun thing about the WUI program is every school does it a little bit differently. And just because a school is in a WUI state does not mean that they participate. So while this is a really amazing program, there are a lot of variables. There are more questions to ask as you're out there in your college search process. If a school says they're part of the program, ask more questions like, what deadlines do I need to be aware of? Is it automatic for everyone? Is it competitive? And any additional items I need to send in, like test scores and additional application. And we can all give you that information. If a school is not part of that WUI program, or maybe they're an East Coast school, they're not part of even this regional agreement, ask what other additional scholarships they have for out-of-state students. They may have some specific scholarships for students from your region, from your state, that are slightly different from the WUI, but could still help you save on your costs. Again, just doing your research, like I mentioned, the WUI is different at every institution. Some examples of ways that it can be different is by program or major. Some universities restrict the WUI to certain programs, or certain programs are ineligible. The examples I give here are kind of two extreme opposite ends of the spectrum. The first is Boise State University. They are part of this program for every major except nursing. Nursing is the only program you cannot receive that WUI discount. While University of Arizona, the only program eligible is mining engineering. So every other program is ineligible. We don't do this to like trick you or deceive you. And a lot of it just does have to do with the funding revenues we're receiving from other sources from the state, and what programs we can and cannot discount. The other way this really can vary is by a merit scholarship. So I mentioned some schools, the WUI is open for all students based on their state of residency. Others treat it a little bit more like a competitive merit scholarship. The examples here are Eastern Oregon University. Pretty much everyone from a WUI state qualifies for that scholarship. While here at Oregon State, while we're in the same state, that is a competitive scholarship with us. So not every qualified student is going to receive that. And then the third area that this can really differ is in the actual price. Since the WUI is a tuition reduction, the actual value of the WUI can change a little bit from school to school as well. So at University of Wyoming, it may be a different value than what you're actually getting discounted here at Oregon State. So that's another reason, if you receive this tuition discount or scholarship from a school, make sure you're doing the math on what 1.5 times that resident tuition rate is to make sure you know your actual cost. Then some other additional factors into considering your true cost is the cost of living. The cost of living in a large city like Portland or Seattle, very, very different than a smaller college town like Pullman or Corvallis. So that can affect your overall costs as well. We have some examples here. These are all just kind of average housing costs that we've provided to incoming students. Oregon, you can see U of O has that housing cost at just over $14,000. Washington estimates their cost of living, again, at UW in Seattle, a little bit more expensive than Central Washington over in Ellensburg. And then even out of state, the cost can get significantly lower compared to the Pacific Northwest. As amazing as I think our region is, that can be a convincing reason for students to look at schools outside of the region to kind of help maximize their opportunities. Keep in mind that when we're posting room and board or housing costs, there could be additional costs like your transportation. Are you going to need to take a bus into campus from where you're living every day? Your clothes, your shoes, are you going to be eating out and ordering a lot of pizza as a student? Those can all add on to your cost of attendance as well. All right, and as we get ready to wrap up here, we've got just some tips and tricks. I will hand over to Amy to get us started on this section though.
All right, so with financial aid and applying for scholarships, it's going to feel like another part-time job to you. It takes so much effort, it takes so much of your time, but the more you put into it, the more you're going to get back in the end, and it's going to set you up for such a successful future. Be prepared with your paperwork. Make sure you're keeping track of deadlines. I'm a spreadsheets person. I'm a spreadsheets list kind of gal. So if spreadsheets work for you, this is going to be super helpful you to utilize that when you're not only doing your college search, but also listing out the different financial aid formulas that each university uses and the different scholarships that you'll intend to apply for as well. So apply for it. Utilize the resources that every university gives to you. Most schools will have a calculator on their webpage. Might be hard to navigate. It takes a little digging sometimes, but it's there for you to utilize. A common error that I see with students is forgetting to put your social security number on the applications, because then we won't receive your FAFSA information and we can't give you financial aid packages. So make sure you're putting your social security number on your application correctly and fully, and making sure that you're sending out your FAFSA application to the schools you're applying to, because sometimes we'll forget which school you're applying to. There's so many that you may be considering, but it's an easy thing for you to log back into your FAFSA application and just look at the list and make sure that every school that you have applied to has the information that they need to get you what you need. There's resources listed on the screen. So I would say definitely start out with your high school career and college center. Talk to those counselors, because they are there for you to help you take that first step into navigating this chaotic world of college searching and finding out how to fund it. It may take you 5 hours to write a scholarship essay and apply for a $500 scholarship, but when you think about it, it's a great return on investment, because think of it. Think of you being paid $100 per hour if you do receive that scholarship that you applied for. Be proactive with it. That's all I can really stress. There's tons of scholarships out there that are stupid weird that you wouldn't really think of, aside from academic based one, extracurricular ones. There's ones for being left-handed. I know there's one for a utility company out here in Washington. for residents of certain counties. And if you apply for it, they'll give you a few $1,000s for the 4 years that you'll be doing your undergrad will stack up, and it will set you up for success later on. Another thing, another great tip is don't think that financial aid ends once you started school. It will continue every single year as long as you're in college. You will have to renew your FAFSA every year, but aside from that, you can find other resources on campus to tap into to help reduce that cost of attendance. So becoming a resident assistant will provide you free housing, and most cases will provide you private housing, because some universities may not allow you the option to pay extra money to have your own private dorm, and the only option is to become a resident assistant. Leadership opportunities, so getting involved with student leadership on campus can provide you with discounted rates for tuition, and of course on-campus jobs that aren't work study. So work study, you're not limited to only work study. There are student employment everywhere on all universities, on the entire campus. We need a student ambassador or a student helper in every office for the most part. So work with human resources on campus, talk to faculty, talk to staff. We are there to help you and help you succeed in this journey. I don't know if Jared has anything to add for tips and tricks.
Yeah, not much to add. I think you'd really summed it up well. The only thing I would kind of repeat would be, if you don't apply for a scholarship, you have zero chance of getting it. So fill out those scholarship applications, put in the hours. Don't kind of discount yourself, say, oh, I'm never going to get it because there's so many other students applying. You don't know how many other students have that same process of, I'm not going to get it, so I'm not going to apply. I actually knew someone when I was a student many, many years ago, who they got all of their junior year of college paid for because they applied for a bunch of scholarships that no one else had applied for. So just don't discount yourself, don't discredit yourself, really put in the effort, because if you don't apply, you have zero chance of getting that scholarship. So I think that would be the only kind of piece that I really reinforce, and remind everyone that financial aid is an ongoing annual process. So you do need to submit that FAFSA every October for every year that you were hoping to earn or receive financial aid. All right, and so as we wrap up here, before Amy and I each talk about our individual schools, these are our emails. If you have any questions about our schools or about anything we've talked about, feel free to reach out to us. I also see a couple have been using the chat feature, so if you have any questions right now, feel free to drop those into the chat feature and we will come back and answer those in just a few minutes during the Q&A period. But at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Amy to talk about Embry-Riddle.
All right, I'm feeling a little out of practice, so bear with me here. So again, my name is Amy. I'm the regional admissions counselor with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. We are a private institution that specializes in STEM programs. We have 2 residential campuses, one in Daytona Beach, Florida, and the other one in Prescott, Arizona, which is the campus that I represent. And worldwide, we have over 120 satellite campuses globally around the world to cater to our veterans serving abroad, and also just adult learners who want to come back and further their education. So specializing in STEM. So we train pilots from the ground up. We do ATC. So if you want to become an air traffic controller, engineering, we offer aerospace, mechanical, electrical, civil, computer, and software. If you want to go into security and intelligence, we are the first and only college of security and intelligence in the nation. So if you want to go on and work in law enforcement or three-letter agencies like the FBI, CIA, and whatnot, we have cyber security as well, a huge growing field with the way technology is growing. So I'm not going to go into a bunch of facts and nitty gritty, but some highlights I like to point out: we are test optional for both admissions and scholarships. We are rolling admissions, meaning technically we don't have a deadline, but I would encourage you for any university to apply early on, as early as you can, just so that you have all that done and out of the way and you don't feel pressured at the very end. And in terms of the application process, we don't participate in Common App or Coalition. It is our own individual application to the specific campus you want to apply to. So it's a quick 5 to 15-minute online application, and then you submit supplemental documents like your transcripts, letters of recommendation, test scores if you want to. Essay and resume are optional as well. And it takes us a week to give you a decision once you complete your application and once we start the reviewing process in October for the year. But that is a little bit about us, and I will turn it over to Jared.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. So Oregon State University, a little bit about it. If you're not familiar, we are the largest public university in the state of Oregon. We actually have a few campus locations. The largest is in Corvallis, about an hour and a half south of Portland. That's where the majority of our students are, about 28,000 undergraduates in a nice college town setting of about 60,000 people. Pac-12 sports, student clubs and organizations, Greek life, kind of all those student life activities. We really do have those to offer, being the largest university in Oregon. We also have over 200 academic programs at our Corvallis location. Just about anything you want to study, we can do at OSU. A little less known campus location is in Bend, Oregon, called OSU Cascades. It is all one Oregon State University system. So when you graduate from either location, your degree won't make any difference which campus you attended, but your campus experience is going to be very different between Corvallis and Bend. They are about 1,200 students out there. So almost has that private kind of very personal university feeling. About 21 degree programs, including a handful of unique ones, including outdoor products, which is very relevant to creating, marketing, and selling any sort of outdoor recreational product. And then energy systems engineering is an interdisciplinary engineering located in Bend. And then tourism, recreation, and adventure leadership is also unique out there for any students who want to do anything in that outdoor recreation space. Admission requirements, scholarship opportunities are all the same between both campuses. Our application is entirely online, either at our website or using the common application. We accept both with no preference. We are permanently test optional for both admission and scholarships. We are never going to go back to requiring either the SAT or the ACT. If you have scores you want to send in, great, we will absolutely look at those. And we do offer merit scholarships. Just by applying for admission by February 1st, you're automatically considered for those. We have a handful of different awards for students from within Oregon and out of state. We are also part of the WUI program, kind of in that scholarship thread. We do treat that as a competitive merit scholarship, like I mentioned earlier. So not every student from a WUI state is going to be selected for that WUI scholarship. But the great news is we have no restricted majors. Even undecided students are eligible, and you are considered just by applying for admission, nothing extra you need to send in. And that really wraps up everything we planned to cover. We are a little ahead of schedule, which I don't think anyone is going to complain about. At this point, if you have any additional questions, feel free to drop those to the chat for Amy and myself, or I think you can just unmute yourself and ask that as well. If you have no additional questions, thank you so much for joining this afternoon. You are free to log off, get a little bit of your day back before whatever next session you planned to attend. But Amy and I will definitely hang out in here for a little bit longer to answer any questions. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining.